What's up, guys? I'm your host, Donald Russell. Just wanted to come to you guys, bring you a couple different businesses. We're going to have a chance to talk to one of a good friend of mine whose name is Devin Lewis Buchanan. He's the CEO and founder of Inspire Youth Services, which is him talking and helping individuals out with mental illness, also with athletes who struggle, going through issues, just trying to not only maintain who they are, but maintain stability and focus going through the sports world, and then just in general of tragedies or issues they've had from being a younger kid growing up to an adult. So hope you enjoy, subscribe, and take it from there. When you graduated Sunco? 2008?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So, you know what the first question I wanted to ask you? Because I ain't even put this on there. Your best Sunco team you think it could have took? That's why.
That would probably been my freshman year. Man, I look back on it. And think like the style of back then, because we were running wing T, bro.
I forgot y'all was on wing T. Yeah.
Bro.
Sunco's was it?
Yeah, we were running wing T. And I think back on it, I'm like, man, we had like athletes, real we had a line. You know, we had guys that went off. I think my freshman they had like 9 guys to sign. And I that was one of the things when I went to Sunco's. Everybody was like, man, you try to go play football at Sunco, you know? I wasn't supposed to be there anyway. Yeah. You know, I got in because my sister was already there, so they had that policy that if you was already there, if you had a sibling there, then you automatically get access. So when I got there, I'm like, I wasn't there for the grades, for the academic part, but I went because Devin Hester. That was just like, you grew up in the area, and you knew who he was, and then they had DeJuan Morgan, Mo. Yep. You know what I mean? So like when I was going in, I was like, man, okay, these dudes could make it out of there. I could make it out of there. So that was one of my biggest things. But I think that
was DeAndre Morgan there at the time?
Yeah. So he was my freshman year. He was a junior.
He was junior. Okay.
Yeah. So I had, it was me. Well, I was on JV, but I'm saying like that team. Damian Barry, DeAndre, Tilo was on the line. Man, we had a team, but legit. I think the offense that they was running. I mean, I look at what the kids do now. And that spread offense and all that stuff, if they would have had that stuff back then and, really had these guys playing, I think it would have been like a really good team that could have competed with like all the other area teams, you know what I mean? Because there was some talent out there, man.
Yeah, we didn't start that, I think, to my senior year, because that's when Jacoby Brissett came in.
Right.
Who was running kind of a spread, but they really opened it up.
Right.
And by the time his sophomore, junior year,
y'all were like a real traditional pro set
under the
y'all had some, man.
But that's because we had a fullback too at the time. So that's the only reason why typically that's it's able to work that way. But nah, man, I appreciate you coming out, especially with the chaos going on now.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you inviting me, man.
First thing I want to talk about is just kind of telling us who you are, how you got started, from Sunco's leading on to now.
Yeah, man. Man, so like I said early on, man, just wanted to be an athlete. Like I just growing up here, playing LA Lotto, you know what I mean? Like
good old days.
Yeah, good old days, man. You know what I'm saying? Like just being in this space, Palm Beach, so many different athletes, so many guys that I could list that I saw playing. And that just made me want to just play. So I mean, since the time I picked up a football, I wanted to play football, and I was just like, man. So being able to go high school, and like I said, we weren't after my freshman year. I think we went to the playoffs, but after that, man, we went on the spell. I think I won 5 games in 4 years. That's Sunco.
That's Sunco.
Yeah.
5 games.
Yeah. Yeah. I won 2 games my senior year, so we killed the drought. But yeah, sophomore, junior year, 1 game, and then my senior year we won 2 games. So wasn't highly recruited. You know what I mean? A lot of teams coming. They were coming to Palm Beach, but they weren't coming to Sunco's to recruit. And so, man, my coach, Allen, G. Allen Williams, craziest man in the world.
I got the name OC. Yeah, I got it from him.
Man, he came my senior year and he was my coach. And he made me a promise. He told me I wanted to transfer, I wanted to do all the stuff, everybody in your ear. But he told me, he was like, man, listen, if you stay, I'll get you into school. And I believed him. I was like, all right, well, he had me all over the place. I was playing quarterback at one point. He put me everywhere. But it was my end of my senior year, and they had the Outback Bowl back then, and I don't know if they still have it.
I haven't heard, but it's so many different. It's so many different camps and
all that stuff.
Yeah, now, they're big with the 707 now. So
right. Yeah. So then it was the Outback Bowl. That was like the big All-Star game in the area, and he went to this meeting. He told me the story later on. He was like, he went to this meeting. He wasn't supposed to be there. Being him, showed up at this meeting as a coach, and he was like, listen, I got one player that I need to get in this game. And I was like one of the last guys picked. To be on the roster. Still got the roster at the house with all the guys that was in the area that was there. And it was a coach there from Louisiana Lafayette, Brian Jenkins, and he just saw me out there in practice. I mean, I looked the part now, what I'm saying? Like I couldn't play, but I just was like raw talent. He saw me. He was like, man, he was talking to my coach, didn't even realize that was my coach. He was like, yo, who this kid is, man? How many offers he got? X, Y, and Z. And the coach was just like, man, he don't got no offer. That's one of my boys. He was like, you don't got no offer. I mean, but if you want to offer him, And he came to the school. He was like, I'm gonna come watch his film. And dude, he watched like 5 plays. He was like, I'm offering. And I was the only offer I got.
Really?
No other offers. Like, this dude came in and just like, I'm offering. And my coach was like, the whole time I didn't believe him. I'm like, man, he just talking. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because it was so many different, the aspects to recruiting back then. It wasn't huddle, it wasn't all that stuff. Like I made my highlight tape like at lunchtime. Like I'm sitting there,
it's apps out the world.
You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't how it was today. And I mean, to think about it, that was 2008. So I remember like every lunch period I coming in, I piece together like just my highlight tape, and you know what I mean? To think back and, him just seeing a couple plays, I think I was at 5 different positions in them 5 plays. Yeah. And he was just like, man, I want to offer him. So, got an offer from UL Lafayette, and went up there, got a chance to get my scholarship. Went out there and, when I first got there, it was interesting, man. It was a dream. Like, it was, a lot of times it was like deja vu. Like, you visualize something so much. Like, you know what I mean? That you saw yourself doing this, I mean, as a kid, and then I got the opportunity to do it. Played my freshman year, got to travel with the team, got to experience like what it was to be a Division I athlete, and to me that was like some of the best time of my life, just being able to be exactly who you envision yourself being as a kid. And so, was blessed to be there. Wound up being a 2-year starter there, my junior and senior year. And my senior year, it was interesting. Like, we got a new coaching staff. Like, we had gone, done the not going to a bowl game and everything. So my senior year, we get a new coaching staff. These guys, they come in, and I want to transfer. Like, I'm ready to get out of here. I'm like, man, y'all not about to rebuild this in my senior year, man. And I, a lot of people don't understand the aspects of what going to college athletics, like the sport. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people see it and they're like, oh, man, you on scholarship, you got this, you got X, Y, and Z. They paying for this, they paying for that. But they don't realize behind all of that, man, it's real. Like, it takes a lot from you. It's a sacrifice. And, I enjoyed every minute of it. But when I started to understand, like, the real depth of, being a student athlete, being this person on this platform and having the opportunity to play, like my senior year when they was rolling them new coaches, I was like, man, listen. So you telling me I can't make a decision? So they withheld they restricted me to put my request in. So they was like, listen, we're not releasing nobody we're not releasing nothing. I was about to go to Bethune because the coach that recruited me, Brian Jenkins, he went to Bethune, right? Yeah. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm about to go to Daytona, about to transfer, and they wouldn't release me. So I was like, all right. That spring I had to have like shoulder surgery, so I couldn't play the spring, had to sit. And I started seeing like, this new coach, he brought like this culture. Like, he just brought this energy, and I was just like, man, gonna stick around. Let me just see how everything go. And in my senior year, we were beginning of the season. I think we were ranked to finish 120. We were the finish last in the country. We were ranked to finish 120 out of 120 teams. Like that's how they ranked us in the preseason.
Okay.
And we went on to win 9 games. Go to the first bowl game in like the modern day school history and everything. New Orleans Bowl. And it was like, you know, it was one of those moments that it was just like, man, like everything's coming together. And so I get to my final game my senior year. We're playing in the New Orleans Bowl championship game. And I just remember going on the field, like we in pregame warm-ups, you know, going through your routine. And I remember just like walking out on the field. I'm on the like 50-yard line, you know, in the Mercedes-Benz Dome, in the Superdome where the Saints play. And I'm like, something just tell me like, take it all in. And I just had this moment. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah. I'm taking it in, you know, okay, this the game. Like, this the game, you know, at that time, I think they had me ranked like 5th to 7th round draft pick probably at that time. It was like, you know, have potential to get drafted, but probably be, you know, free agent signee or whatever. So I was like, okay, this is the game where I have to prove that, right? And like 10 minutes later, we in pregame warm-ups and like freak accident. My teammates, we going through walkthroughs, they fall on my leg and I dislocate my kneecap. Like before the game even start, pregame. Just doing final walkthroughs. And I just remember I was like, I'm on the ground. I'm like, no, like I'm crawling. I'm like, God, like, why? That's the first thing that I was like, why? Go to the locker room, and I'm just like, you know, I'm out of it. Like all my teammates, they around me, everybody. I mean, crying. They're crying. They're like, bro, you gotta get up. You gotta play, bro. You gotta play. I'm sitting there, they done gave me the shot and everything. They done gave me the shot and everything. I'm sitting up like, man. And they just hit me. I was like, bro, you're not going to play. And I just like, out of all this, it was like chaos going on. My coach in there, he emotional. I'm just like, and it just like hit me and I just heard like a voice. It's crazy. It just said, go back to school. And a lot of people didn't know. I had packed up my car and everything before the game. Before we took the trip to New Orleans, I was giving stuff away. I gave my TV away, gave the shoes away. Like, I'm giving everything away in the dorm. Like, I'm just like, bro, I'm about to leave, man. I'm about to go to the league. Like, after this, I'm going training and get my agent and all that stuff. And at first thing they had, I was like, go back to school. And I was like, dang. And so we wind up winning the game on a last-second field goal. Crazy as like game. Like people to this day say that's like the best moment in school history. We win this game, win the championship game or whatever, and then I go back to school, finish my degree. Had 1 semester left. Finished my degree, and at that time it was I get a call. I think a week of my graduation. I get a call from the Oakland Raiders, and I think my graduation was Saturday. They called me Monday. And it was like, you know, hey, we about to have rookie camp. You know, we want to invite you out. At the time, I ain't have an agent. I ain't have
nothing.
I ain't have nothing. Because like when I got hurt in that game, I had an agent that was on the phone with me. You know, he talking with me before the game. Like, you know, and that's the thing. A lot of people don't understand. Like as student athletes, we don't get training and understanding of how that part of the game works because we're taught to be so resistant from it. You know what I mean? Like stay away from agents. They can mess up your eligibility, all that stuff. So when the game ended and I called the dude back, I'm like, hey, you know, he was like, hey, yo, didn't you get hurt? I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah. So what about your teammate number 5? I was like, oh, okay. At that time, I was like, yo, I don't want to talk no more agents. I'm just gonna have to do the work. So Raiders, they called me. They was like, yeah, we want to invite you to rookie camp for a tryout. You know, and I'm like, all right, cool. You know, I was like, hey, but I got graduation on Saturday. They was like, so you want to go to graduation or you want to come? And I was like, oh yeah, I'll be there. Like, send a ticket, you know. So I go out there. You know, rookie camp 3 days. So go out there and I get out there. It's like 80 guys fighting for 8 slots just to go to camp.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And that's when I realized, and that's the thing. Like you play this game, but you don't even understand the business of the NFL. Like it's numbers, and I had to realize that when I came into camp, they had already had 2 rookies that they signed as free agents, and they had 6 guys already under contract as safety when they brought me in. So when I got there, the day I got there, I was like, oh, I'm not gonna be here.
Yeah, you realize
they needed a body to go through camp. So 3 days later, they sat everybody down. They told everybody like, hey, these 8 guys, y'all, coming to camp. Everybody else, we appreciate y'all being here. But, going from there. So that was my 3-day NFL career, you know, by Labor Day weekend. But that was it, man. I felt the way I was still wanting to play, but I mean at that time it got interesting. I started to realize there was a business behind it. It wasn't just like just show up, play, and it didn't matter what you really did. They already kind of had their set idea of what they were looking for. Yeah. So it was interesting. Yeah, man.
One of the actually it was fun.
University when I was what grade was it? When I was in high school. I saw her go through the master's program for social work. And I remember now, I mean, I was so proud of my mom for doing it. I remember watching her do papers and all that. I told myself, I'll never do that. I'm never going back to school to do this. You know what I'm saying? I was a kid. I was like, hey, I saw her doing the papers. I was like, nah, I'm good. And I went to Barry and, you know, I told him, it was a guy who was doing the recruitment. I told him, I was like, listen, I got 2.3. I don't know what it's going to take for me to get into this program, but this is what I want to do. And he was like, yeah, you better write one hell of a personal statement, you know what I mean? And I did, and they let me in. They accepted me, and so you know, it's crazy. I started an organization in school at the same time, August 2017, and so going back to school, I was like, you know, I want to be a therapist. That was my first thought, like I'm gonna be a therapist. And then I found out a little bit more about like the field of social work, and I was like, man, there's some layers to this. So after that, it just became something that was like, this is more a part of you than you really even knew. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like from everything, from your experiences. And so being able to use that, you know, what I learned to cope that, to add that to my experiences and stuff like that, I was like, okay, I think these can fit really good. So it was
talk about, you know, what did you feel mentally, you know, and then that, you know, that transition from, you know, from that sport life to now it's, you know, I have to focus on school.
Man, it's tough because so I had 2 injuries. Gonna have one my junior that I played through. So I tore my labrum and my rotator cuff. Had to play through that. You know, I didn't even know nothing was wrong. You know, I just showed up and played. Man, ain't miss a practice or nothing. And so to have surgery and then miss time, and I think I learned a lot about, you know, myself and the time that I missed going into my senior year. Because I was away from really like the team, you know, wasn't able to compete for my spot, which I had started the year before they brought in new coaches. So I'm like, am I still a starter? You know what I mean? All those questions go through your head. And then, you know, there's also the element, I remember having surgery and then they prescribed me you know, medication, you know, for pain. And I remember, man, I forgot what, I think it was called Demerol or something like that. A strong pain medication. And I remember taking it one day. I'm sitting in my dorm room and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, it's raining outside. You know, I just had surgery and just like it just felt dark. Yeah. You know what I mean? It just felt dark and I'm just like, hold on, something ain't right. You know what I mean? I called my mom, talked to my mom, like, no, something ain't right. Like, you know, I don't feel like myself, but I'm talking to her. She had a friend that was a nurse or whatever that started looking up, you know, and she did some research and she was like, yeah, you know, those are sometimes the side effects of it. And, you know, come to find out that was the medication that Michael Jackson had overdosed on. Wow. And when she told me that, I was like, I'm good. I'm not taking it no more. You know, I'm done with that. But, you know, coming out of that, you know, I felt like just wanting to be more accessible team. Like you never want to be a part because people don't understand, like with sports, yeah, on the field, you know, when you're playing, yeah, that's great. But that camaraderie when you're in the locker room, you know what I mean? When y'all at weight training, you know, all that stuff, that's really the essence of the sport. You know, that camaraderie. Like people don't realize how strong that is. And so going into my senior year after getting hurt in that bowl game and then not having eligibility left, but having to go back to school, being back on campus. And for me, it was tough because everybody knew me as the guy that got hurt in the bowl game. That's the first thing everybody leave. I mean, from donors to the president of the university, he'll come up to me and be like, yeah, man, I'm so sorry that happened. So they remind you of that constantly. You know what I mean? Every day you got to work around that. And, you know, also the business of college sports too. You know, I remember coming back off injury and then not being a part of it. I'm not an active member of the team anymore. I graduated. You know, I'm still a part of the university, but I'm no longer a football player. So even when I got hurt and I came back and I was like, hey, you know, trying to get rehabbed and all that stuff, like that wasn't even available to me. Like, yeah, you got hurt in your service to us, but you're no longer part of the team. Like,
you're no longer part of this family.
You know, you can come work out, but you know, you can't work out with the team. You know, so that was like a reality. That's when it really hit me. I was like, man, like You know, I gave y'all 4 years. You know, we just put a band in here, and still, like, at the end of the day,
it's over.
It's over. Like, you know, so for me, I found a lot about myself after that last injury. You know, going back to school, it was just like, I was like, it was a real spiritual awakening for me. Like, it was really like, you know, somebody, like, you got stripped of this identity. You know what I mean? In a sense, because nobody really saw you as, you know, this person anymore. Like, you're no longer, you know, in that spotlight. You can't show up on Saturdays, make plays, and then be able to, you know, go back to your dorm room and live life. Yeah. So it was just like, I'm a student now. Like, I'm just a student. And so that was interesting, man. But it, you know, transitioning out of sports, I think that was one of the toughest things that I dealt with on different levels. But just not having outlet. Yeah. Right. So, you know, when you play a game since the time you was in elementary school, like, you know, for me, that's why I took everything out. I'm a totally different person on that field versus the person that people see, you know, every day. So, you know, for me, it was just like I lost a piece of myself not having that. And so, you know, trying to balance. What's going on? Yeah, there's, you know, trying to balance that reality of like, okay, well, you know, where do I generate all this energy that I got? You know what I mean? And that was tough to navigate, man. That was. Yeah.
I've always called that Whisper Saturdays.
Yeah.
During the week, you know, everything is hype. You got practice, leads into Saturdays. And when I first started playing, I just kept twiddling my fingers and everything. I just kept, I'm excited, I'm amped up, and I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
Every Saturday morning, I hopped up and I got adrenaline, I got goosebumps, and it took me a few months, almost a year. Almost a year to where it was like, this is it, you know, this is.
Man, it's crazy because, like, even to this day, I ain't played football in 8 years, bro. In August, when August hit and I smell grass, bro, I smell fresh cut grass, like, it triggers me. I'm like, yo, like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, I be like, hey, that smell, you know what I mean? But it triggers this idea that, you know, man, I won't, like, it's this itch, you know what I mean? And like you said, it's a tough thing to try to, like, to identify it. Like, why is this happening? You know, what's going on? You know, like you said, like, you wake up on that Saturday and, like, you know, I had a routine for.
Yeah, since you're almost 5 or 6 years old.
Right, you know what I mean? When you show late ladder, like, you wake up, that's your routine. Go to the Little League field. You probably watched a couple games before you went.
Yep. Watch a couple games afterwards.
You know what I mean? So, you know, having that same routine and then not being able to play a sport that you love, like, not by choice. Yeah. Right, so I think that was the toughest thing. It was like, even if I wanted to play, where would I play?
Where would you play? Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that was one of the toughest things where it's like, you are no longer able to. Yeah. Right? So, like, for basketball guys, I mean, yeah, you play basketball, you go to the gym, open gym, you know, you go hoop. Yeah. Football, you not going to just throw on some pads and just be like, hey, I'm at the park, y'all pull up. Like, you know what I mean? That's not how it works. So, yeah, it was a little tough, man.
I still look at phone numbers from out of state, and I'm like, ooh, what's the one of that? Illinois, ooh, Chicago Bears. And I'm like, why am I thinking? I stopped playing. Why am I thinking that way? But it's habits, you know. And I'm still thinking like, ooh, maybe I need to do some ladder drills. I'm still ready if they call. I'm like, nah, nobody calling you. I had to keep telling look at myself in the mirror. Nobody calling you. Yeah. But that's tough. But
that's real. Though.
But not even with that going on, you know, your transition going into what led you into your degree, and then of course inspire you. Yeah. You know, tell us about that. How did you get to?
Man, it's for me. Like, I look back on this, like, man, like I didn't see it happening as it was happening. You know, a lot of people think that when you transition into something, they think it's so intentional, but sometimes it's not. So when I got out of school, my son was born that same year that I was done playing football. And I said I was like a godsend, like, because I stopped playing football. My last time playing football was May. He was born in November. And so I had got my first job because I was like, yo, I need a job. I can provide. And I got my first job was working in, it was like a respite home, like a group home for kids that were in foster care. Okay. And so I was doing like, it was called independent living. So I was helping kids to help them transition out of foster care. So they could get their first apartment, you know, get their first enroll in school, get their high school diploma, their degree, everything. So for me, when I got into that, you know, at first I was like, it's a job, you know, sure, I get my little 13, 50 hours. I got a degree, I'm getting 13, 50 hours to do all this work. But man, I found passion in it, you know, because those kids were just, they were searching for somebody that they could at least say, well, at least he did something. Yeah. You know what I mean? And for me, I didn't see the value in what I had done previously. For me, I was like, I don't do it no more, so there ain't no value in it. Yeah. But they saw value in that. So they were looking at me like, oh wow, man, you played and you did this. You know, they'll go in there, they'll Google, I saw your highlight tape on YouTube. You know what I mean?
Like it doesn't mean anything.
You know what I mean? To me, I'm like, you know what I'm saying? I work in a cubicle, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? But to them, it was a lot. So, you know, being able to use that, I think for me, it was just like, man. So started doing that work. And then I started to just become more interested. I was intrigued by, you know, how things work, the process of it. And then started doing case management for like DCF. That took a lot. That took a lot out of me. And then I got burnt out doing it because I was seeing things that was triggering me because of my own childhood. You know what I mean? I think a lot of times when you know, I was raised by a single mom, 6 kids. My mom was a social worker. So a lot of the stuff that I was seeing with parents, I'm like, you know, in my mind, I'm normalizing it because that was also my experience. Of course. You know what I'm saying? But for people around me, and that's the thing with being in the field where it's, one, I was always the only male that worked in the jobs that I was working in. I was the only male. I knew it was majority female, majority white female at that. So that cultural aspect, they didn't really understand like, oh, it's these kids are sharing a bed. Yeah. To them, it's like, oh no, the kids can't share beds. I'm like, what you talking about? Like, no, like, you know what I mean? Like,
you're spoiled right now. You're being spoiled,
right? That's, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's a blessing they got a room. You know what I mean? But I think that was one of the things that kind of allowed me to see what was like how I view things versus how, you know, things are viewed on that level. So at first I tried to run away from the field. I didn't want to do it anymore after I had done and got burnt out. So I was like, man, let me try something else. I tried training. Yeah. Tried to jump in the train like any other athlete. You know, that was one of the things I was like, hey man, I just want to be around the game. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And then it dawned on me. I had some kids, man, and it was a group. I was living in Brevard County at the time, and they had some kids that was go to the school called Cocoa High. I mean, they were I mean, big time athletes, and like working with them, it really wasn't the sport that was connecting us. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we the football training and all that stuff, but it was like the interactions in between. So that kind of really pulled me to say like, man, there's something more to it than just the football training aspect. Right, so that's when I started to look at it a little differently, and you know, when I started my organization, I was like, yeah, let me kind of get into something that's a little bit more like a different angle. Like a lot of people expected me to just say, hey, you use football, and you know, if you reach some kids with football, and I was like, nah, it's some kids that don't want to play football, and they still need, you know, somebody to kind of, you know, latch onto. So. Started my organization in 2017. So yeah, at the time I was working and working with kids with mental illness, you know, disorders, diagnosis, and you know, started to see like a lot of them look like us. Yes. Right, and I was like, you know, but they weren't able to get the proper services or treatments because, you know, people would view it as more a behavioral problem than a mental problem, or
suck it up mentality is nothing wrong.
Right, you know what I mean? Like, and that was the thing. I started to see that from not only just providers but from parents. You know what I mean? Parents didn't want to believe that there was something wrong with their child. You know what I mean? So it was like, nah, he just behaving, he just acting out, but not knowing that there was something really going on. So for me, I started to see that, and I was like, oh wow, okay. So when I started my organization, I had this idea to go back to school. A lady who was at the time, she was a director of mine in that position. She put a bug in my ear. She was like, you know, have you thought about going back to school? I was like, listen. I said, listen, I graduated 2.3. Like, I don't know no school that's gonna accept me in a program, you know, with my GPA, because I was like, I can't even tell you the classes I took. I graduated with a general studies degree. Like,
I had no idea.
You know what I mean? Like, I had to pull up my transcript. So, in reality, when I look back on it, I was like, man, I barely got out of my undergrad. And so when I applied for schools, I applied for one school, I didn't get in. And I was like, okay, that ain't the school I wanted to go to anyway. But man, it had me a little bit down it a little bit. And then my mom, she graduated from Barry University when I was, what grade was it? I was in high school. I saw her go through the master's plan. I remember I was so proud of my mom for doing it. I remember watching her do papers and all that. I was telling myself, I'll never do that. I'm never going back to school to do this. You know what I'm saying? I was a kid. I was like, man, hey, I saw her doing them papers. I was like, nah, I'm good. And I went to Barry, and, you know, I told him, it was a guy who was doing the recruitment. I told him, I was like, listen, I got 2.3. I don't know what it's going to take for me to get into this program, but this is what I want to do. And he was like, you better write one hell of a personal statement, you know what I mean? And I did, and they let me in. They accepted me. And so, you know, it's crazy. I started an organization in school at the same time, August 2017. And so, going back to school, I was like, you know, I want to be a therapist. That was my first thought, like, I'm going to be a therapist. And then I found out a little bit more about, like, the field of social work. And then I was like, man, there's some layers to this. So after that, it just became something that was like, this is more a part of you than you really even knew. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, from everything, from your experiences. And so being able to use that, you know, what I learned to cope that, to add that to my experiences and stuff like that, I was like, okay, I think these can fit really good. So it was, it's been a journey in that sense of just, you know, having this idea on paper. Yeah, right. And actually going through with the steps, because, you know, you don't have a manual. Yeah. Like, people don't give you this transcript or this manuscript in a sense to say, okay, these are all the steps that you have to take to do this, right? And so for me, that was the interesting part.
Yeah. Nah, with that, and that's a gift that I think a lot of that you can definitely give to a lot of people, because, like I said, we grew up where, if you did talk about anything with, you know, that was a fear. You never talked about anything with mental healthness, or if you wasn't feeling, you know, like yourself. And it also goes through, you know, you can piggyback off experiences that you had in the past that you say, man, I probably should have talked to somebody at that time, but you not even know at the time that you're hurting or going through something. And it's almost like when I train some of these athletes, I always get nervous. And I used to actually stay away from training college guys for getting ready for combines and our pro days, just because I knew if I'm training 10 of you guys, probably 2 of you guys are probably gonna make it, and maybe 2.
So you going to camp just to get to camp.
Just to get to camp, right? And that was something that I didn't want to see them go through, and I also didn't want to relive, you know, that moment as well. But, you know, I had a chance to, you know, let me get these guys my experience. Let me talk to these guys. Let me at least give them the heads up, because I wish somebody you know, would have done that for me. So no, I think what you're doing now, I mean, it's unbelievable. And I think you're getting a chance to touch everybody, you know, at a young age, and teach them and have them understand, you know, some of the things you're gonna go through, not just through sports, but mentally, you know, mentally, even physically, how you're gonna feel mentally. You know, like you said with the injuries, I think that's a huge problem in the sports world, regardless of who it is, regardless of what sport you play, man, woman. You know, you get an injury, there's some things you're gonna deal with. You know, there's some things you gotta look in the mirror and say, I don't know if I could finish, or who can I talk to? You know, even I had my, you know, what was hard for me was, you know, I had injuries, but I couldn't talk to my family about it because nobody been through that. Nobody, you know, had scholarship. Nobody played the sport. So it was like, you know, I would love to talk to you about the things I'm going through, you know, and like you said, at the time, you know, the coaches, you know, switching out, and you're like, all this is running through my head, but I have nobody to talk to.
When you went off to Kentucky in the beginning, I mean, you know, again, the expectation was highly talented guy, South Florida. We got us a running back. You know what I mean?
It is. This is what we do. If you do this, this is what's going to happen.
Gonna be right. Yeah. And again, like again, the sports side of it is that, again, every year they're bringing somebody in to take your spot. That's the reality of college sports. Oh yeah, that's really sports in general.
When you actually look back, I was like, wow, like it's a gladiator style. Like,
it's like every year, and I remember going through that and not really understanding also with the sport that if you were out of state guy, you know what I mean, it's even harder for you to keep a spot, claim a spot, and then keep it. Because again, like the people who put money into the university are from the area. So they want to see guys from the area, you know, that they saw as high school stars go to the university and then flourish. You know what I mean? That's the idea of building the program. You know what I mean? You don't, a lot of programs don't want to build programs from out of state kids. You know, of course, if they're talented, like 5-star kids, then who cares? But, you know, teams that aren't those, you know, prestigious programs, they want to build it from, you know, within the kids from the community. So being an out-of-state guy, going to a school and, you know, being expected to come in and make an impact, you know, you're not only dealing with that aspect of like playing, coaching, the coaches and just playing, but also, you know, there's some pushback from the person who just signed a check to go into that to that facility. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that was one of the things that I had to learn that too. Like, okay, this is a business as well. You know what I mean? It's not just about getting kids here to just win games. It's also about establishing some stuff within the community, and so I learned that part of it too. That was interesting when I first got there. So yeah.
Do you see anything as far as your future, which I know is hard to you know to see, but do you see anything in the future that you feel like, you know, those are parts that I can touch, whether it's, you know, talking to kids, you know, mainly in the sports world, or is it talking to just, you know, individuals, you know, in person? Because, you know, one of my biggest questions for you was, you know, how about, you know, not only the kids but the parents, as far as teaching them, hey, look, these are some of the signs, you know, you may want to look for in your child.
Yeah, definitely. So I have 2 businesses now. So I have Inspire Youth Services, which is more working with kids that are, you know, from marginalized, underserved communities. So, you know, growing up here, you know, being a kid that grew up on Section 8, being a kid that, you know, had to rely on, you know, services because my mom was in a position where she couldn't do it all on her own. That was really the focus of like starting this organization, was to get services to those kids that wouldn't always have access. And then being able to educate the parents and the families about, you know, what it is, because that was something that I felt like was lacking when it came to even reaching out for services. Like, is this something I should reach out for? Because I don't really think it's a problem. Like, yeah, he seems a little, my son, he don't seem like he's struggling and stuff, but I don't think it's too bad to where he need a therapist. Right? So my biggest thing was to do education first, you know, because, you know, all mental health problems doesn't require a therapist. But at the same time, if you have education and you have ways to cope on your own, then, you know, that'll have you better suited to take on things when they come up in your life. Because at the end of the day, we all going to face some type of adversity. We all going to face trauma. Like, we all going to face something that's going to impact our lives in a way where it's going to change the way we think and respond to just life around us. So that was like when I first started. That was the organization I started in 2017. Inspire You, actually, I took that and branched it into another project, and now it's a business. So Inspire You is actually a consulting agency now that I work with student athletes around mental health. And so, you know, after graduating, I was like, man, you know, or even before I graduated, I was like, you know, I want to get back into working with, you know, in the sports arena, because that was one of the things that I know a lot of my, you know, like just struggles that I had was transitioning out of sports. And so I did a research project that I wound up presenting at. It's called the Black Student Athlete. I know you did one, but I reached out to a bunch of former athletes and had them fill out this, you know, anonymous survey about, you know, transitioning away from sports. And you know, the responses and the data I got from that, you know, really showed me that there was a significant, you know, like it was significant in the sense that the experience of transition out of sports had a lot of the same components that we see when we're screening for depression. So when I did the screening, I tailored it to like this screening that we do in mental health for depression. And so I used it to be able to show like athletes, like, hey, you know, were you experiencing this when you transition out of sports? Like, you know, for me, when I got out of sports, I couldn't even watch I couldn't watch football no more. Like, for me, I couldn't be around the sport and then go to no games. I really didn't care for it no more because I was just so detached from it. You know what I mean? I didn't want to watch it. It would like just trigger me. You know what I mean? And that was just my experience. You know, a lot of guys are just like, man, going to coaching. And I was like, I don't want to be too close to the game anymore. Like, I just don't want to do that. So, how I dealt with it may be different for others, but I know some people, their experiences were different. So after I got the data back, you know, I looked at it and I was like, man, and started thinking about like, how could I frame this to relate to athletes? Yeah. And so when I presented it, it was titled Post-Transition Sports Depression. And, you know, transition out of sports and then having to transition, and then, you know, how tough is that? And I mean, these were a lot of the people, I mean, man and female, who actually did the survey. They were successful, you know, right now, married, you know, probably 50% of them were like married, making good income. Like, it wasn't like they were struggling or anything. You know, a lot of them had secondary degrees, some were doctors, but they all, in the same sense, had this struggle with, you know, transitioning away from sports. Yeah. And so most of the people that did the survey were, I think 88% were Black, you know, African American. So I started to think about what was underneath that. Like, what was underneath the fact that, you know, their transition from sports was so difficult? Because I had found some other research that showed that white athletes didn't really have an issue transitioning away from sports like Black athletes. And I was thinking, what's underneath that? You know, so I think, you know, that was one of the reasons that I really wanted to say, hey, well, how do we go back into work with athletes about, you know, educating them about mental health and some of the things that they go through, because it's so many different components that can affect you, right? Yeah. So that was one of the things that I want to start. Now, I started doing some business, you know, listening to stuff, and they said, hey, anytime that you have an idea or anytime you have a thought, put it into business. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I give that advice to anybody. I was like, you know, to start a business or buy a little business name, it costs about $150. Those pair of Jordans. You know, why not? Because you never know what you can do with that. You know what I mean? So that's one of the things that I started to just, if I have an idea or a vision about something, hey, that could be a business, and then we'll work on everything after that. But I think it's important for people to understand, like, man, it's a lot of needs out there, and we could fill a lot of holes by just, you know, these ideas that we sit on sometimes. Yeah. All right. So that was one of the big things that I wanted to do. You know, after I graduated, but also, you know, just having, you know, these ideas and these spaces to say, hey, I can add some value to that. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So. Nah, man, and it's so funny, and you know, when you hear you know, talk about these things, because it's like you said before, this wasn't planned, but we having this conversation, it almost seemed like you knew exactly from day one, this is what I want to do. You know what I'm saying? This is what I want to become, and this is how I want to give back. Yeah. You know, and it's so funny, you know, how you experience this, you know, the things you go through. You know, and even, you know, what happened in your past life prepared you for, you know, this moment, you know, and even though we didn't have that calling to be on the NFL field, you know, for a few years, we had a calling to maybe push somebody else. Not only they want to be on the NFL field, that's okay, but I want you to be a successful person, you know, physically and mentally, you know, so no, I understand why the name Inspire You is what I love about it is plain and simple, and it's to the point. Understand this, you know, and is there a reason behind Inspire You? Is you really digging into it? I like how simple it is. Simple, like, and it's right to the point. To me, it was like, you know, when you think of business, you want branding, right? So a lot of businesses now, the real push is like, how do you brand it for people to recognize, you know, what that is, and when they see it, they're like, I'm curious, right? So the logo itself, I created this logo, right? I'm not even a graphic designer, nothing. Yeah, so sitting around one night and I'm watching He Got Game. Watching He Got Game, I'm sitting there, I'm watching, you know what I'm saying? Jesus Shuttlesworth, I'm just sitting there watching him. And he goes to on a visit with Rick Fox. Yeah. When he goes to, it's called Tech U. And I see the shirt that Rick Fox is wearing in the movie, and I'm like, that's hard. I'm like, hold on. I started thinking, I was like, let me go on my laptop, you know, see if I could create something. I just was like, hey, I want something that when people see it, you know, it could mean many different things. I had one guy who was telling me, he was like, man, that could be like you know, university, you know, this and that. Because that's how I saw it. It was like when you see it, you know, it appeals to, you know, collegiate.
But it makes you want to understand why.
Why,
what
right?
That mean? Yeah.
So, and that was my whole thing. Like when you're bringing something that is a little taboo to a certain audience, especially like mental health. Like if I'm bringing this to athletes, again, I got to package it right. Yeah, I got to package it right. Like I can't just walk into no room full of athletes and be like, yo, hey, we about to talk about mental health.
Yeah, nah, they gonna turn the other way.
Right.
You know, you know, they're trained to turn the other way.
That's the reality, right? Because I've been the kid in that room too. Like, I remember we used to have speakers coming there. I'm like, bro, you ain't go to the league, I don't hear what you're talking about.
Oh, no. You ain't. Where you been?
You're right.
You
play
where? Nah, I can't talk to you.
He played the league.
Yeah,
I was like, I'm good, bro. And they put my head down. I've been that person too. So, you know, for me, it was just like, okay, well, you have to give them something that is going to attract them first, before you even open your mouth about what you about to say. So for me, it was just like, hey, I need something that when people see it, they can like, oh man, I'm curious. Like, what is that?
What is that?
Know,
what
so, yeah, like just starting out and just playing with, you know, designs and stuff. And then when it came out, I was like, man, that looks pretty good. And so, you know, it's helped me in a sense to be able to understand, because transition away when, like, you know, I didn't go to business school. Like a lot of us, when we start our our endeavors and we start our business, like our backing wasn't because I went to business school, I'm gonna make a lot of money. We started with this mission, this purpose. Yeah. You know what I mean? So having this idea that's like purpose led, because if you look in the NFL right now or any sport, a lot of these athletes have foundations. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that was my mind. My first mind was like, hey, when I go to the league, I'm gonna start me a foundation. I'm gonna give back. I'm gonna give turkeys away on Thanksgiving. Yeah. You know, all the things that you could do with your foundation. You know what I mean? But when I really sat back, I was like, okay, well, you're not going to the league anymore, but can you still have, you know, an organization? Can you still have something to give back? Yeah. And I think that was one of the things that's like, you know, a lot of people they put things to the side when they're no longer feeling like they're the person that they can do it. Yeah. Because a lot of athletes, they have good intentions to give back to their community, but it's like, okay, but if you don't go to the NFL, would you still give back? Yeah, or if you still don't go to a level where people envy you or like look at you as this person, would you still do it? And for me, it was like, that was kind of like a challenge to myself. Like, would I still do this even if people didn't see me as that? Yeah. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people now, when the people who have supported me the most, they don't know me from playing sports. Yeah. They don't know none of that. I tell them, they be like, oh wow, you used to play sports? Oh, that's cool. You know, like to them, it's just like, oh, all right.
You just play football. That's
right. That's it. You know what I mean? But it's harder to get people to buy in to, you know, what you're doing that know you from somewhere. Yeah. All right, so the people who know you from way back, like, yeah, man, he used to play football, you know what I'm saying? He doing his thing with, you know, that's a good look for him and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, but you know, a lot of these things that I'm doing, you know, these were ideas that for me it was always kind of sitting there. And you know, I wanted to make sure that, you know, within this life that I'm given, that I tap into those things. Yeah, of course. Right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of people are sitting on $1 million ideas, you know, impactful things that they could bring to others, and I think, you know, that's one of the biggest things that I couldn't live with. If I lived the rest of my life and be like, man, I didn't do nothing going through an old book and be like, man, that was gold mine right there, you know what I mean? So that was one of the biggest things for me. It was just, you know, going all in on it.
Man, hey, I mean, that is, for one, that's inspiring, like who you are, and it's a way, which is why I want to do this video blog. You know, not only just to get ideas, somebody related to fitness and sports related, but to also get people to understand, you know, your background, you know, who you are, what you do, you know, how can you, you know, give to the world inspire you, and your experience of, hey, look, this is who I am, this is what I went through, this is how I can help you, because you're not just, you know, just talking about it. You've been through it. Yeah. You know, you can tell everybody from the happiest time to the worst time possible, to where, you know, you sitting in that room again and it's like, I don't feel right. So, you know, I think, you know, when I see you, you know, all your posts, you know, I love it. Yeah. I always show, you know, my family, my fiance, like, hey, look, man, this is a guy, well, you know, not only do we go to, you know, a battle against each other, but, you know, he's battling out there, he's still fighting, you know, not only for himself, his family, his son, you know, and for individuals that, you know, he don't even know, just any way he can help. So, you know, I also want to say thank you for giving that to the world, and thank you for coming here too, man. So I appreciate that, man.
I appreciate you having me, man.
Definitely.
Like I said, it's beautiful to see others transition too.
Yeah.
You know, for me, that's the stuff that keeps me going. Like when I see, you know, other guys tapping into the stuff that they're passionate about. Like you say, you know, you starting a video blog, like a lot of people be like, yeah, you know, Don, trainer, yeah. But again, it shows that there's other avenues that you're taking to one, fulfill this need that you have, right? Because again, we can sit with these things, but again, they eat us up. You know, the more we sit with them and we don't do anything with them. But you know, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. Like, even if nobody looks at this and say, hey, this is valuable to me, I could at least look at myself and say, hey, it was valuable to myself. Like first, I'm gonna start with me first, right? And if it's valuable to me, then I know it'll eventually catch on, regardless of the timing or whatever it takes. But you know, I think that was important. So you know, to be surrounded, and I look around like, you know, we know some guys that have done some amazing things in a short time. You know what I mean? Mutual friends, guys that we around, and I think it's so powerful that, like, sometimes those 6 degrees of separation. You know what I mean? Because like I said, high school, your dad was my barber. You know what I mean? Like every time I go to the barber shop, you know, he was like, yeah, man, who y'all got this week? You know, I'm telling him that. He was like, yeah, you know, them boys, they play so and so. And so, like, you know, it was always just this welcome and this feeling, like, you know, because not having really like real role models, real men to like really kind of mold you and sculpt you. You know, your pops was one of those guys that, you know what I mean, like being able to go to his shop and be able to chop it up with guys, having real conversations to really be able to pick some things, you know, ask him some questions. And every time I came back from school, you know, he was always there, and I was like, man, so, you know, I look at it now, and it's like sometimes down the road, like things come back around full circle.
All right, big time.
You know, so I always, you know, think about like, man, like I may be that guy one day for a kid that, you know, just wanted a little conversation or time, and I'm like, yeah, you know, I sat down with him, and the next, you know, this kid go off to do something, and then he come back, yeah, man, I remember the time when you told me this one. I'm like, I was just talking, bro, like, you know what I'm saying? So you never know, right? You know, you never know who you may inspire down the road, man. Because I mean, I had those moments that was like, it'd be a guy maybe just talking to me, and I'm like, I may take him like, man, that was so powerful. He was just. I just had, you know, I was just talking. I was just having a conversation.
You're just having a conversation now, but your experiences actually opened up a few things. I was like, man, it makes me think. I was dealing with something that I didn't know was a problem. Even now, I'm still like, that's probably an issue that I have now. That's, you know, kind of reflecting on, you know, who I am, you know, and it's good to, which is why I want to have these, you know, these video blogs to talk about those things and get it out, and not only, you know, just reflect off some of the things that we've been through. But to also help individuals who may be going through something, whether you play football, whether you know, basketball, or, you know, even if you're not playing a sport, you know, in general, you could be going through things that's similar, and it's good just to, you know, to see, you know, not only, you know the steps of, you know, how can you come back and say, all right, you know, that was a problem, you know, analyze it, and then, you know, it's not to say fix, but, you know, how can I make this, you know, a better situation for me? So. Nah, that's good. That's great, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Right. That's pretty good. Yeah, that should be there. That flow, man. We'll get some hits for that one, man.